Sarah had never believed in ghosts. Not when her grandmother claimed to see her dead husband in the hallway. Not when her college roommates swore their dorm was haunted. Not even when she watched those ridiculous paranormal shows with her kids on Halloween. She believed in what she could touch, what she could prove, what made logical sense. That certainty died the night she heard her daughter singing a lullaby she'd never taught her. The move to Eldergrove Estate had seemed like a blessing. After years in their cramped two-bedroom apartment, the sprawling four-bedroom house felt like a palace. Marcus, her husband of 12 years, had finally gotten the promotion they'd been praying for. Their 3 children, Emma, 9, Daniel, 7, and little Sophie, barely 4, had their own rooms for the first time. The neighborhood was safe, the schools were excellent, and the house itself was beautiful. All hardwood floors and crown molding, with a garden Sarah had already imagined filling with tomatoes and herbs. They moved in on a Saturday in late September. By Monday, Sarah noticed the cold spot in the hallway. It was just outside Sophie's room, a pocket of air so frigid it made her breath fog even though the thermostat read 72 degrees. She mentioned it to Marcus that evening while folding laundry, but he barely looked up from his laptop. "Old houses," he'd said. "Probably just bad insulation. I'll check it out this weekend." The weekend came and went. Marcus found nothing wrong with the insulation. The cold spot remained. On Thursday, Emma came downstairs for breakfast with shadows under her eyes. "Mom, who's the old man who stands in my doorway at night?" Sarah's coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. "What old man, sweetie?" "The one in the old-fashioned suit. He just stands there and stares at me. He doesn't say anything, but his eyes are really sad." Sarah's laugh came out forced. "You've been having bad dreams, honey. Maybe we should limit screen time before bed." But Emma's expression didn't change. "It's not a dream, Mom. He's real. And he's not the only one." That night, Sarah stood outside Emma's room at midnight, watching her daughter sleep peacefully. She told herself it was just the stress of the move, a child's overactive imagination. She told herself this right up until she turned to go back to bed and saw the figure at the end of the hallway. He was exactly as Emma described, elderly, in a 3-piece suit that looked like it belonged to the 1940s, with eyes that held an ocean of sadness. Sarah's scream died in her throat. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, could only stare as the figure raised one translucent hand and pointed directly at her. Then he was gone, dissolving like smoke in wind. Marcus found her 20 minutes later, still standing frozen in the hallway. She couldn't stop shaking. "I saw him. Marcus, I saw him." To his credit, Marcus didn't dismiss her immediately, but she could see the concern in his eyes, the kind of concern you have for someone whose grip on reality might be slipping. "Let's get you back to bed," he'd said gently. "You're exhausted. The move has been stressful for all of us." The old man was just the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah saw her, a woman in a blood-stained nightgown who wandered through the kitchen at 3 a.m., opening and closing cabinet doors, a small child who giggled in the basement, though when Sarah went down to investigate, she found only Sophie's abandoned dolls arranged in a circle, facing inward like they were holding a meeting. And the worst one? A man with no face who stood in the corner of her bedroom every single night, just watching. The house began to feel malevolent. Doors slammed when no windows were open. The temperature would plummet without warning, leaving them huddled in sweaters in the middle of the day. Sophie stopped sleeping through the night, waking up screaming about the burned lady who wanted to play with her. Daniel started wetting the bed again, something he hadn't done in 3 years. Emma grew sullen and withdrawn, refusing to explain what she saw in the bathroom mirror that made her refuse to go in there alone. And Sarah was falling apart. She couldn't sleep without pills, couldn't eat, lost 15 pounds in 3 weeks. She started seeing them everywhere, in reflections in the corner of her vision, sometimes standing right in front of her in blatant daylight. The woman in the blood-stained nightgown followed her to the grocery store. The faceless man appeared in the back seat of her car while she was driving, causing her to nearly crash into a telephone pole. "We need to leave this house," she told Marcus one night, grabbing his arm with desperate fingers. "Something is wrong here. Something terrible happened in this house, and they won't leave us alone." Marcus pulled away, and for the first time, she saw something worse than concern in his eyes. She saw fear of her. "Sarah, you need help, professional help. This obsession with ghosts, these hallucinations, they're not hallucinations. The kids see them too." "The kids are feeding off your anxiety," Marcus said, his voice rising. "You're scaring them with all this ghost talk. Daniel caught you burning sage and chanting. They think your mother is losing her mind." "Because something is hunting us," Sarah screamed. "Why won't you believe me?" But Marcus didn't believe her, and when she woke up one morning to find him packing suitcases, she knew she'd lost him too. "I'm taking the kids to my mother's for a while," he said, not meeting his eyes. "You need to figure out what's going on with you. See a doctor, get some help. When you're better, we can talk about putting the house on the market and starting over somewhere else." "Don't take them," Sarah begged, tears streaming down her face. "Please, Marcus, it's not safe here, but it's even less safe if I'm alone." "I'm sorry," he said, and she could hear he meant it. "But I have to protect our children, even if it's from you." They left on a Tuesday morning. Sarah watched from the window as Marcus loaded the last suitcase, as the kids climbed into the car without saying goodbye, as her entire family drove away. The house felt different immediately, heavier, darker, like something had been waiting for this moment. She lasted 3 days alone, 3 days of constant torment. The spirits weren't just appearing anymore, they were interacting with her. The woman in the nightgown grabbed her arm, leaving icy burns on her skin. The faceless man cornered her in the bathroom, and she swore she could feel breath on her face even though he had no mouth. And the worst one, she started hearing the voices, whispers that came from the walls, from the vents, from inside her own head, telling her things, showing her things about this house and the people who had died here. The old man had hanged himself in the master closet after losing his fortune in the stock market crash. The woman in the nightgown had been stabbed by her husband in a jealous rage. The child in the basement had been locked down there during a house fire, forgotten in the chaos. And the faceless man had been a serial killer who'd taken his own life in the house after murdering 7 people, burning off his own face with acid before drinking poison. They all wanted something from her. They all needed something, and they wouldn't stop until they got it. On the 3rd night, Sarah awoke to find every spirit in the house standing around her bed, their translucent forms creating an eerie circle of pale light. The air was so cold her teeth were chattering. The faceless man stood at the foot of the bed, and though he had no mouth, she could feel him staring into her soul. "What do you want?" she sobbed. "Please, just tell me what you want." The old man stepped forward, and when he spoke, his voice was like wind through dead leaves. "Help us cross over. You're the first one who could see us, truly see us. We've been trapped here for so long, and we just want to rest." Sarah wanted to run, wanted to scream, wanted to pretend this wasn't happening, but she thought of her children, of Marcus, of the life she was losing because of these spirits. If helping them meant getting her family back, she would do it. "How?" she whispered. "How do I help you?" What followed was a night that would scar her forever. The spirits showed her where their bodies were hidden, where their unfinished business lay. The old man's suicide note hidden in the attic that needed to be found and given to his descendants so they would know he'd loved them despite everything. The woman's diary buried in the garden, containing proof that her husband had been abusing her and that her death wasn't suicide as recorded, but murder. The child's toy still clutched in tiny bones behind a bricked-up basement wall that needed proper burial. And the faceless man had been a serial killer who'd taken his own life in the house after murdering 7 people, burning off his own face with acid before drinking poison. Sarah spent the entire night digging, searching, crying, and praying. She called the police at dawn, barely coherent, telling them about the bodies in the crawl space. When they arrived and found exactly what she'd described, their skepticism turned to horror. The news coverage was immediate and intense. The house on Eldergrove Lane became infamous overnight, the serial killer's lair that had hidden its secrets for 60 years. Forensic teams swarmed the property. Families of the missing finally got answers. The house was declared a crime scene and later condemned. But Sarah noticed something as the investigation unfolded. The spirits were fading. The old man appeared one last time, smiled with infinite gratitude, and dissolved into light. The woman in the nightgown, once her diary was given to her granddaughter, simply stopped existing. The child, after a proper burial was arranged, was seen one last time. Sarah understood why. His evil was too great, his crimes too terrible. He wouldn't find peace. He would find judgment.